catch up. How are you guys doing? I heard something really interesting yesterday. I was talking to an old friend who started thinking about this back during Passover, sort of thinking about an inner dimension to the Exodus story, the Jews leaving Egypt. And he had some very beautiful ideas about how the journey out of Egypt, Moses' journey in particular, is a journey that all of us can view as a personal journey. And particularly, my friend said, Moses realized on his own that he had to get out of Egypt. And that was true. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's in the palace as an adopted son, as it were. And at a certain point, he realized that it wasn't real for him. It was a mask. He was not one of the Egyptians. He was a Jew pretending to be something that he wasn't. And he realized who he really was. He came to identify with his people. He took action, and he ended up leaving Egypt. So that is something that is for sure available to all of us. All of us, to one extent or another, find ourselves playing a part in life and realize it's not us. It's not really us. And when you realize that, that is often the beginning of a real journey of self-discovery. Then my friend talked about the burning bush, and he said that was like listening to the voice of his inner voice, the voice of his heart. And I said, that's very pretty. It sounds pretty, but I don't think so. I think that we're all looking for the burning bush in our lives. But the burning bush is not internal. We don't find the burning bush inside ourselves. The burning bush is a message from God. The burning bush is a call to our personal mission. And, in order to understand what that burning bush is in our world, we have to get clear. We have to ask God for help and for guidance, for clarity, so that we can understand, so we can follow that language of events. Because God speaks to all of us, right? We're not prophets, so God doesn't speak to us in the language of words, but he speaks to us in the language of events. And to tune into that radio station, as it were, takes practice. You have to really think, okay, you know what? I've been told, and this is true, that everybody, for all of us, our entire lives, everything that happens to us is a message from heaven, is a message from God. All the events of our lives are a message from heaven. And gradually, over time, we come to understand, or we hope we can come to understand, what that message is. The burning bush for each of us is external. It's something going on around us, which is a call. It's a call to us to stand up, to be counted, to ask, okay, there's something in this world that only I can add to this world. Every person, there is a difference that only you can make in this world. And when you figure that out, that is your burning bush. This is a line of thought that it just came up in this conversation last night with a friend, and I'm going to work on it some more and put something together for all of you, my holy brothers and sisters. But for today, let's do the daf. What are we doing? We are holding by page 61. That's Samech Aleph, Daf Samech Aleph. We're in chapter 6, and it's the second Mishnah that we are exploring. Let me just make sure that we're good. Let's see if I can find this. Here we go. This is on the YouTube side. Very good. I see Deborah Hazelwood and James Roth on the YouTube side. And here we go on the Facebook side. Very good. Very good. Patsy's here. Janice Beanstalk. Great to see you all. Okay. We have a delightful teaching today. This is a delightful daf because today we're going to encounter something that comes up every day. It's a halacha, a law that touches our lives absolutely every single day. I mean, assuming you don't have shoes that you tie with Velcro. But even so, even if you tie them with Velcro, it would apply. Slip-on shoes, it would still apply. If you wear shoes, this applies. How do we get there? All right. So we're in the second volume of the Talmud, Tractate Shabbos. We're in chapter 6, page 61. That's Daf Samik Aleph. And in chapter 6, this second Mishnah is about with what may a man go out on Shabbos and what may he not. Yesterday we discussed the case of the spiked sandal. A man may not go out with spiked sandals, and we defined what they were. And we learned that in the case of the spiked sandal, it's not, as it was with so many of the accessories that we discussed in the first Mishnah, which was about women's accessories, because the sages feared that you might come to take off the accessory while you're in the public domain, forget that you've taken it off, carry it in your hand, and come to violate the biblical prohibition on carrying in the public domain. So the rabbinic decree was to protect one from violating the biblical prohibition. If you violate a biblical prohibition, you become liable to bring a sin offering when the temple stands. If you violate a rabbinic decree, you're exempt from bringing a sin offering, but you should not violate rabbinic decrees. Okay. Now we're in the second decree of this Mishnah about men, and this is that a man may not go out with a single sandal, only wearing one sandal on one of his feet. So the first question we might ask is, well, why not? Why can't you go out with a single sandal? The Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, addresses this point and says you can't go out with a single sandal because people will look at you and assume that you're carrying the other sandal. In other words, they might think that one of your sandals broke. Now you're walking around with one sandal and you're carrying the other one perhaps under your armpit, and they will suspect that you're violating Shabbos. Why do we really care that they think that? Well, our sages have shown us that it does matter. We want to avoid the appearance of impropriety. So we can't go out with a single sandal. An alternative reasoning might be that if you go out with a single sandal, my kids will do this from time to time. I don't know why. They go outside wearing just one shoe because they think it's funny. But then if you take a few steps with just one shoe on, you probably realize that that was a foolish idea. It's uncomfortable to walk with only one shoe on your feet. And so you might take that shoe off so that you're even-footed. Now you're barefoot on both sides. And then what happens? Now you're carrying that sandal because you didn't want to lose it. You were kind of foolish to go out with just one sandal on, but now you don't want to just throw it away while you're out in the public domain. So you might take it off, carry it, and violate that biblical prohibition. That's the reasoning behind why we don't wear it, why the sages decreed you can't wear a single sandal. But then the question comes up, which foot? You can't go out with a single sandal. I'm sorry, I didn't say this before. You can't go out with a single sandal unless one of your feet is wounded. I should have said that. The Mishnah says you cannot go out with a single sandal unless you have a wound on one foot. Okay, so now we ask, if you have a wound on one foot, and that justifies going out in the public domain, walking around with a single sandal on, which foot is the sandal for? Is it for the wounded foot or is it for the healthy foot? So Rav Huna suggested that the sandal is for the wounded foot. I'm not sure why you would wear, if you're only going to wear one sandal, you would put it on the wounded foot, right? Because you could have a sandal on the other foot. So why is it that you would only have one on the wounded foot? And the Gemara tends to agree. The other sages tend to agree. Yes? Oh. And it is, who is it? Hiya bar Rav. So Hiya bar Rav suggests, no. If you're going to go out with a single sandal because you're wounded, So the single sandal goes on the healthy foot. Now this makes much more sense to me. Perhaps the wounded foot is wounded in such a way that it will really hurt to put a sandal over the wound. So that, you can see that, right? You can imagine somebody's foot is in a cast, so he's going to wear a sandal on the healthy foot and not on the foot that's in a cast or in a bandage or that's wounded in some way. Okay, that makes sense. And that, in fact, is the law. So you can go out with a single sandal on Shabbos only if you're wounded on one of your feet and the sandal goes on the healthy foot. Very good. There was an incident where Rabbi Yochanan said to Rav Shemin bar Abba, and Rav Shemin bar Abba was a young rabbi, a young sage who was a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Excuse me. So Rabbi Yochanan says to his assistant, "Give me my sandal." Rav Shemin passes the right sandal to Rabbi Yochanan, right? He gives Rabbi Yochanan his right sandal, the sandal for his right foot. Rabbi Yochanan answers, "Well, now it's like you've made my foot wounded." We take a step back. What's he saying? He's saying that you handed me the sandal as if one of my feet is wounded. Now, it's unclear whether Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rav Huna or like Hiya bar Rav in terms of the sandal goes on the healthy foot or the wounded foot. It could go either way. But for sure, what this incident tells us is that Rabbi Yochanan had a practice of putting on his left sandal first. That's why when his assistant handed him his right sandal first, he said, "Oh, you're creating a situation for me as if, if I'm putting on my right sandal first, it's because I couldn't put on my left sandal, which is my normal custom." Why did Rabbi Yochanan put on his left sandal first? Because we put our tefillin on the left arm. A right-handed person, a right-handed man, puts his tefillin on his left arm. So Rabbi Yochanan had developed a practice of putting on his left sandal first to imitate the fact that he dons tefillin on his left side. But this is not the halacha. In fact, we have another teaching in a baraisa, right? So it's a teaching as old as the Mishnah, but that didn't quite get into the Mishnah, but that is quoted in the Gemara. And that is that a person always puts on his right shoe first. Why? This is beautiful. Why would God care which shoe we put on first? Right? God never said anything about putting a shoe on first. This is purely rabbinic. There's nothing in the Torah about which shoe we put on first. Why did this practice develop? In terms of putting one's shoes on first, whether it's Rabbi Yochanan who put it on the left first, or the Baraisa, which says we put it on the right side first, what we're learning is that for the sages, all our actions can and should be directed for the sake of heaven. If there is a holy way, let's find it and let's do it. It's a lovely thought. So why the right foot first? Because in all matters, the sages gave privilege to the right side. It was their custom that the right side is the honored side. Where does it really boil down to? Where does it come back to? It doesn't say this here in the Gemara, but I would suggest that in terms of the Sephiros, which we are counting now, the attributes of God, God's right hand, right, God's right side is associated with chesed, with loving kindness, and God's left side is associated with gevura, with judgment, firmness, and restraint. Why would we privilege loving kindness on the right side over judgment on the left side? Because if God treated us all with strict justice, who could survive? We're all flawed. That's what it means to be human. And so we pray that God's attribute of mercy will overcome his attribute of justice. And that's why we always say that the right side should be, everything being equal, the right side should be privileged a little bit more. And we remind ourselves of this by putting on the right shoe first. So now we have two traditions. The Baraisa says put your right shoe on first. The Rabbi Yochanan says put your left shoe on first, like the Tefillin. So Rav Yosef says, well, now we have two traditions, so either way you do it, there's an established custom to support your practice. But Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak, I want to just double check that. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says what we do for the halacha, and this became the established halacha, the established law, is that we honor both of these traditions. And so, here it is, my holy brothers and sisters. This is the Jewish and holy way to put on your shoes. Ready? You put on your right shoe first, but you don't tie it. Then you put on your left shoe and tie it first. Sort of like tefillin is something that we tie on. And so we remember that idea of Rabbi Yochanan by tying the left shoe first, and then we tie the right shoe. Again, put on the right shoe first, then the left shoe, put on the right shoe but don't tie it, then put on the left shoe, tie the left shoe, and then tie the right shoe. That is the holy way to put on our shoes. And since it's one of the first things we do in the morning, and it takes a little bit of mindfulness, it's a beautiful way to get the day started and get off on the right foot. When we take off our shoes, anytime during the day or at the end of the day, when we take off our shoes, there's no mention here of which we untie first. It doesn't mention about untying. But we do, I suspect we reverse the whole process, but for sure we take off the left shoe first. Why? Because we wouldn't want to have a situation where the right foot is exposed and the left shoe is garbed, as it were. That would be dishonorable for the right foot. So we always take off the left shoe first and then take off the right shoe, so we don't have a situation where the left shoe is dressed and the left foot is dressed and the right foot is not. Got it? Okay. And I'll see if there's any questions about that. This very, very simple practice, it really can add quite a bit of holiness to our lives. Okay. And likewise, now that we're on the subject of treating the right foot with a little bit of extra dignity compared to the left foot, we also learn that if you're washing your hands, you wash the right hand first and then the left hand. If you're washing your feet, you wash the right foot first and then the left foot. One might ask, what about a left-handed person? It doesn't get addressed here. If anybody has heard something different, let me know. In terms of tefillin, yes, a left-handed person puts his tefillin on his right arm. But as far as I know, in terms of shoes and washing, even a left-handed person is going to wash the right hand first, wash the right foot first. If you're taking a bath or a shower and you're going to wash your whole body, which one do you think you wash first? Your head. If you're going to take a shower or take a bath and you're going to wash your whole body, you wash the head first because the head is sovereign over the rest of the body. We return to the Mishnah and we learn also that a man may not go outside on Shabbos wearing tefillin. Now, in order to understand this teaching, you have to realize this is a minority opinion. It's based on a minority opinion, meaning the majority held that tefillin is not something we wear either at night or on Shabbos. We do not wear our tefillin at night, and we do not wear our tefillin on Shabbos, right? And so if you're not wearing it on Shabbos anyway, why would you walk outside wearing it? You're not wearing it. But there is a minority opinion that people could wear their tefillin on Shabbos. So if you held by the minority and you were wearing your tefillin on Shabbos, you would still not be permitted to leave the house with it and walk around in the public domain with your tefillin on. Why? Because you might go to the bathroom, and if you go to the bathroom somewhere, you must take your tefillin off. You cannot enter a bathroom wearing tefillin. If you took it off to enter the bathroom, then when you came out of the bathroom, you might forget to put it back on, and you might carry it more than four cubits in the public domain, and then you would have violated the biblical prohibition on carrying in the public domain, and you become liable to bring a sin offering. And that is what the rabbis are protecting you from. Also, even for one who holds that you don't wear tefillin on Shabbos, you might actually put it on anyway because you need to move it, and you might carry it by wearing it, but you shouldn't do that in the public domain, again, because you might enter a bathroom. Now, why do we not wear tefillin in the bathroom? So I have my tefillin here, and we're going to actually need both of them. So I always keep the left side first, the one I bring out first. So this is the head tefillin. This goes on the head. Nowadays, we don't walk around with tefillin all day. In ancient times, some people did. Not everybody, but some people walked around with tefillin all the time. Now, generally, we just put it on in the morning during morning prayers. Okay. Oops, this is the arm tefillin. So this is the head tefillin. Here we go. And the head tefillin has this shin on it that you can see. And it's not, now the tefillin, it's in this box, it has holy scrolls in it. So you might think that because of the scrolls that are inside, you can't go into a bathroom because you're carrying a holy text with God's name on it. But apparently that's not the reason. I guess because the scroll is completely enclosed in the box, that we're not concerned about the scroll. However, we have the shin on the outside of the box, and that commandment, to put the shin on the outside, goes all the way back to a law given to Moses at Mount Sinai. That's the shin. At the back of the head tefillin, we have this shape, this knot, which is the letter Daled. Okay, it's in the shape of the Hebrew letter Daled. And here we go. On the arm tefillin, which we wrap on the left arm if we're right-handed, this knot right here is suggestive of the Hebrew letter Yud. Shin-Dalet-Yud is a name of God. It is a name of God that's written on the outside of the tefillin, and because we are literally wearing a name of God that is visible to anyone who sees us, we don't dishonor that, the fact that we're a person wearing the name of God by wearing that name of God into a bathroom and going into a place of filth. So if we happen to be wearing tefillin, let's say during morning prayers, and we need to go to the bathroom, we must take off the tefillin before we enter the bathroom. And so that's one of the reasons why you couldn't do this on Shabbos, because if you were walking around with tefillin and you entered it, you needed to go to the bathroom, you take off the tefillin, and then when you came back outside, you might pick up the tefillin and decide, I can't put it on right here at this moment. I'm just going to walk over a few steps and do it over there in a more private place. And then you would have carried an object a few steps in the public domain, and you would be liable to bring a sin offering for violating the biblical prohibition on carrying in the public domain. And that is what I have for today. So let me check the comments. Do you have any questions or comments for me? Okay, not on the YouTube side. And what's going on over here? Melissa Beineman says, I'm wondering what customs are in place for recovery from surgery that impact the right foot. How to honor the right side over the left when on crutches or shoeless. What happens when the right is less than the left for a given time? I think what we've learned in today's teaching is that we have our customs and we suspend customs as needed when we have a medical condition. right? So if you've got a medical condition that prevents you from putting on the right shoe and then the left shoe and then tying the left shoe and then tying the right shoe, so then you're exempt. You can't do it. For all I know, there are some people that have a medical condition that means they just can't tie their shoe. Okay, so then they can't do this. You can only do what you can do. You can only do what is possible. But in the more typical situation where we can, then that's what we want to remember to do. Right shoe, left shoe, then tie the left shoe, and then tie the right shoe. I've also heard somewhere that in addition to sort of privileging the right side by putting that shoe on first and recalling Rabbi Yochanan and the way that he honored the fact that we put Tefillin on the left arm by putting on his left shoe first, and so we tie the left shoe first. In addition to all that, there's another kind of teaching that, we aspire to strength, but we're mindful of those who are less strong than we are, right? So it's almost like, when you're on an airplane and they tell you that if you're traveling with a child, you have to put the God forbid, you need the oxygen mask in the plane, so you should put your oxygen mask on first and then the child's, so that you're stable enough to get the job done. If you put the child's oxygen mask on first and you have trouble doing that and you're not wearing your own, you might come to be so deprived of oxygen that you are unable to complete putting it on the child, and then you never get around to putting it on yourself. So you got to make sure that you're safe, and then before you get comfortable, you got to be safe, but before you get comfortable, whoa. Oh, I'm sorry, I never lit or light up the darkness candle. Whoops, just noticed that. So you got to make sure that you're safe, but before you get comfortable, you take care of somebody else's needs. And we are reminded of that just in putting on our shoes in the morning. Put on the right shoe, get safe. Put on the left shoe to take care of others, tie their shoe, and then come back and tie the right shoe, suggesting that we get safe first and leave our comfort till after we've taken care of somebody else's needs. Celsa Canedo, if I'm pronouncing that right. What does it mean that a mitzvah is positive, time-bound commandment, and if women are exempt, is there a mitzvah that women do instead? In terms of positive, time-bound commandments, exactly. So men, have certain things that they must do on the clock, right? So you have to say the Shema in the morning, you have to say the Shema in the evening, you have to pray 3 times a day. There's all kinds of time-bound positive commandments that women are exempt from. They may say the Shema twice a day, they may pray 3 times a day, they're just not obligated to do that. The 3 mitzvahs that are incumbent on women and not on men, that women are obligated in and men are not, are making challah, lighting Shabbos candles. Somebody help me out here. I'm spacing out. Nina, are you there? Are you in the office? Help me out. I know there's 3, and I'm just spacing for a moment. Somebody's going to help me out. Come on now. Come on now. Women have 3 commandments that are particular to them, and it's Shabbos candles and making challah, and somebody's got to help me out here. I'm so embarrassed. This is what happens. I wasn't prepared to answer that question, but it'll come. It'll come. Come on, somebody help me out in the comments. What's the 3rd mitzvah for women that's particular to women? Somebody's going to help me out. We'll come back to that momentarily. And family purity. Thank you very much. Exactly. And women going to mikvah once a month, right? So when the husband and wife are prohibited to each other during the time of her menses, then she counts 7 clean days afterward. She goes to immerse in the mikvah, and then the couple are permitted to each other again. So those are the 3 mitzvahs that apply to women and do not apply to men in the same way. I got it. It just took a while to show up. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Nina. Okay. Melissa Beineman says, was this extended to socks? Right leg in the pants first, right arm in the sleeve, etc. What a great question. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. I know it applies to shoes. I'm going to have to look that up and get back to you guys. I'm not sure. It would tend to make sense, but I'm not sure. I know for sure about the shoes. I'm not sure about the rest. Okay, that is what I've got. Carolyn Dobson Chavez is commenting on challah that there's a shortage of yeast here. Yes, we have heard. We have heard. The regular yeast is unavailable. Nina made an amazing challah last week, which was, she was happy about because she was using a new kind of yeast that she hadn't used before. And she aced it, right? Which is not easy to do. You guys know, like when you're baking and you bake with unfamiliar materials, it's an experiment. You hope for the best. So yes, there is apparently a yeast shortage. I'm not saying you should hoard yeast, but if you don't have yeast, get some yeast. And if you haven't made challah, this is a great time to experiment with challah and learn how to make challah. And I bless you all that you should have challah in your lives even half as good as the challah that Nina makes. It's just amazing. I'd also, while we're on the subject of Nina, I'd like to mention, I realized the other day when I taught about Rabbi Akiva and Rachel, and Rabbi Akiva said to all the other sages, after he had really reached that incredible prominence, and he was the most important sage of his generation and had 24,000 students, and he said to everybody, I'd be nothing. Nothing that I've done would be possible without Rachel. Everything that I've become is on account of my wife's actions, on account of the sacrifices that she made so that I could learn. And I would like to echo Akiva's sentiment and say that anything that I've been able to accomplish as the accidental Talmudist was possible and only possible because of Nina being my partner in everything that we do. She likes to be kind of like behind the camera and not so forward. We usually have to drag her in front of the camera. But she writes the hero stories every Thursday. She's part of the writing on everything that we put out and every decision we make at Accidental Talmudist. So a hand for Nina. Please acknowledge her. Okay, that is what I've got for us today. Sending you all big love from the West Coast here in LA. May you all be blessed with delicious challah, as much yeast as you need to bake it with, that you remember to put your right shoe on first, then the left, and then tie the left shoe, and then tie the right shoe, and that this tiny little matter of holiness that we put into our lives at the time of putting on our shoes in the morning actually elevates your life just that little bit. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of today, if you came in late, go back and listen to it. When we're looking for our burning bush, right? The burning bush is that call that comes from the world, not from inside. The still voice inside of us from our soul is God-given and allows us to recognize the burning bush in the world. But the burning bush in the world is something that God sent us, a message from God to each of us in particular that says, you know what? That's a difference that you can make, and only you can make this difference. Only you can add this thing into the world. So make sure you do it. If you haven't found your burning bush yet, I bless you that you should identify the burning bush in the world, that it's your call, your mission, and a thing that only you can repair in this world, a thing that only you can add to this world. All the best, my holy brothers and sisters.